The rain fell in a steady rhythm, a soft percussion on the roof of the black SUV as it wound its way up the narrow, pine-lined road. Vermont's mountains rose like sleeping giants around them, mist curling along the forest floor, thick as breath on glass. Lila stared out the passenger window, her fingers absently tracing the foggy pane, watching as the trees blurred past like ghosts. Ethan kept both hands on the wheel, jaw tight with focus, though he couldn't help the occasional glance at her, his wife of 10 years, and lately a stranger in their shared silence. He wanted to say something light, maybe about how the house looked in the photos, maybe about how they used to laugh on road trips like this, but instead he just said, "We're almost there." Lila nodded. "Okay." Her voice was soft, clipped. There was no malice in it, only distance. They hadn't touched since the hotel the night before, just polite brushes of shoulders, murmured goodnights. Even the car ride had been quiet, like two passengers sharing space but not a destination. This retreat, this old Victorian estate nestled in the woods, was supposed to change that, give them space to breathe, reconnect, rebuild, maybe even remember why they chose each other all those years ago. When the estate finally came into view, Lila let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. The house was enormous, 3 stories of faded white wood, steep gables and wide bay windows. Moss clung to the stone steps, and ivy crawled like veins across the outer walls. A large wraparound porch groaned under the weight of time and damp weather. The windows, tall and arched, seemed to watch them. "Wow," Ethan said, pulling to a stop in the gravel driveway. "It's bigger than I expected." "Haunted bigger," Lila murmured. He smiled, testing the waters. "Spooky romantic." She raised an eyebrow. "That's a thing?" He leaned over and kissed her cheek. Just a whisper of lips. "We'll make it one." The gesture was small, but something flickered in her eyes. A warmth. A memory. They stepped out of the car into the soft drizzle, the scent of rain and earth thick around them. Ethan pulled their bags from the trunk, while Lila stood at the base of the porch, staring up at the house. She tilted her face toward the sky, letting the rain kiss her skin. "It's beautiful," she said as if to herself. He climbed the steps beside her, took her hand. "Welcome home." For the next few weeks, anyway. The inside of the house was just as grand, and just as eerie. High ceilings with ornate molding, a grand staircase that curved like a spine toward the upper floors, chandeliers that swayed slightly, even without wind. Dust motes floated in the air like memories. The place had a pulse, and it didn't take much imagination to hear it. They explored quietly, footsteps echoing on hardwood floors. The kitchen was large but old-fashioned, the dining room filled with heavy furniture that smelled faintly of cedar and something older. Upstairs, the master bedroom was a haven of soft gold light. The bed, a massive 4-poster draped in white linen. Lila ran her fingers over the carved headboard. "Weirdly romantic." "Told you." Ethan set their suitcases down, then wrapped his arms around her waist from behind. "And it's just us here. No city noise. No work. No distractions. No excuses," she whispered, turning to face him. Their eyes met. Really met. For the first time in days, maybe weeks. Then thunder cracked overhead. The house trembled slightly, as if reacting. Lila jumped. "Just a storm," Ethan said gently. "We're in Vermont, comes with the territory." But her expression didn't ease. She stepped away, brushing hair from her face. "I'm going to unpack." He watched her walk to the suitcase, saw the way her hand lingered on the zipper like it might unzip more than clothes, like it might unravel something deeper. He didn't press. Not yet. Instead, he wandered into the study off the main hall. It smelled like books and time. He ran a finger across the shelves. Dusty spines, leather-bound journals, a faded photograph in a silver frame, a woman with dark eyes and an enigmatic smile standing in front of the house. He turned it over. No date, no name. Outside, rain intensified, tapping harder against the windows. Wind whistled through cracks in the wood. Somewhere deep in the house, a door creaked open on its own. Ethan froze. "Lila?" he called. No answer. He stepped into the hallway. The door to the basement stood slightly ajar. Chapter 2. The Basement Door. The hallway smelled of old wood and something older, something damp and faintly metallic. Ethan stood a few feet from the half-open basement door, his hand hovering near the frame. The shadows beyond the threshold yawned wide and black, as if the stairs led into another world. The overhead bulb in the hall flickered once, twice, and then steadied, casting thin lines of light down the steps. "Lila," he called again, louder this time. Still nothing. He wasn't exactly afraid, not yet, but the house had a way of making silence feel dense, heavy, almost sentient. He took a step closer to the door. It groaned under its own hinges, opening another inch with a long, tired sigh. Ethan exhaled sharply. "Jesus," he muttered, "get a grip." He reached in and flipped the light switch on the wall. The bulbs flickered to life below, dim, yellow, humming, but enough to reveal a stone stairwell and shelves filled with crates, tools, and what looked like gardening supplies. There was a wine rack on the far wall, and something covered in a dust cloth that might have been an antique trunk. Nothing alarming, nothing human. Just an old creaky basement. Still, he stepped back and closed the door. Firmly. When he turned, Lila was behind him. He jumped. "You scared the hell out of me." Her arms were crossed, rain still clinging to her lashes. "Where were you?" "I thought I heard something." A door. It was open. Lila looked at the basement door like she was seeing it for the first time. Her expression didn't change, but her eyes narrowed slightly. "I didn't hear anything. I thought you were in here." "I was upstairs," she said quietly. "In the bedroom." "Right," he said, scratching the back of his neck. "Sorry. The house just feels weird." "It does." She gave a faint nod. "But maybe it's just the rain and the echo. We're not used to this kind of silence." They stood there for a moment, the air between them filled with more than just quiet. Something unspoken passed in her glance. An unease, maybe. Or something deeper. "Come on," she finally said, reaching for his hand. "Let's light a fire. Warm this place up." He followed her into the sitting room, grateful for the change in atmosphere. The fireplace was grand, black ironwork with vines etched into the grate, and a large stone mantel that stretched halfway up the wall. Lila knelt in front of it, arranging the logs with practiced hands. Ethan watched her. Not just her body, though it still drew him the way it always had, but her focus, the subtle sadness around her mouth, the way she tucked a lock of damp hair behind her ear without thinking. 10 years of marriage, and she still could surprise him with how beautiful she looked in ordinary moments. He moved behind her and placed his hands on her shoulders. She didn't flinch. "Thanks for agreeing to this," he said softly. She turned her face slightly toward him. "I didn't do it for you." A pause. "I did it for us," she added, after a beat. His breath caught a little. She leaned into him, just a bit, and he let his arms slide around her, resting his chin against the crown of her head. They knelt there together in front of the fire as it began to crackle. the warmth rising slowly. Outside, thunder rolled in the distance. A storm was building. Later that evening, they unpacked in near silence, save for the occasional question about where to put things. When Ethan opened the bottom drawer of the wardrobe in the bedroom, he found a small bundle tucked behind the cedar lining. It was a letter. A real one, folded paper aged at the edges, tied in twine, no envelope, no name. He frowned, then unwrapped the string. The handwriting was careful and elegant, feminine. "You don't know what she's hiding." "But you will. Soon." No signature, no date, no other details. Ethan blinked. "Read it again." And again. His heart kicked once, hard. Lila stepped out of the bathroom, drying her hands on a towel. "You okay?" He looked up at her and hesitated. Then he folded the letter and slipped it back into the drawer. "Yeah," he said. "Just tired." She nodded and climbed onto the bed, the lamp beside her casting warm amber light across her bare shoulder as her robe slipped slightly down her arm. She tucked her knees up and leaned back against the pillows, watching him with a softness he hadn't seen in weeks. "You coming to bed?" she asked. Ethan smiled faintly. "Yeah, just a sec." As she turned off the lamp, the room fell into quiet shadows and the rhythm of rain on the windows. He slid into bed beside her, their legs brushing beneath the sheets. For a long while, neither of them spoke. Then Lila whispered, "I missed this." Ethan shifted toward her. "Me too." They kissed soft and slow, lips remembering what it was like to be familiar, to be wanted. It wasn't hurried or desperate. It was a beginning. But in the back of Ethan's mind, the letter echoed like distant thunder. "You don't know what she's hiding." Chapter 3. Secrets in the Walls. Morning came with a curtain of gray rain tapping against the windows. The house breathed in the silence of early light, its wooden bones creaking with each gust of wind. Ethan awoke to the sound of water dripping somewhere, rhythmic and slow, like the ticking of a clock made of water and time. Beside him, Lila was still asleep, her dark hair fanned across the pillow, one hand resting loosely on his chest. Her robe had shifted slightly in the night, revealing the curve of her collarbone and a single strap of the black slip beneath. Her face was relaxed, soft with sleep, and for the first time in a long while, Ethan felt peace stirring beneath the surface of everything else. But the letter still sat in the back of his mind, like a stone beneath the sheets. He didn't want to move, didn't want to disturb her, but he couldn't stop thinking about the drawer. The smooth texture of the paper, the precise handwriting, the words that now whispered with every blink. "You don't know what she's hiding." What could Lila be hiding? They'd been together for over a decade. He'd seen her through joy and heartbreak, watched her laugh uncontrollably and cry so hard she couldn't breathe. He knew her favorite wine, the exact way she liked her tea, the kind of music that made her dance in the kitchen. And yet, he also knew she'd been more distant in the past year, withholding, quiet in ways she never used to be. Gently he slipped out of bed, careful not to wake her, and padded barefoot to the wardrobe. The floor was cold beneath his feet, and the air in the room still held the damp chill of last night's storm. He opened the drawer again. The letter was gone. He froze. His pulse surged. He searched the drawer again, sifted through the lining, felt around the sides, lifted the few folded sweaters they'd stored there. Nothing. The bundle was nowhere to be found. Ethan stared into the empty drawer for a long moment, jaw clenched. Behind him, Lila stirred. "What are you doing?" He turned, trying to mask the alarm in his voice. "Just looking for socks." She smiled sleepily, pulling the blanket tighter around herself. You're already dressed." "Right." He forced a chuckle. "Guess I'm just cold." She blinked, yawned, then rolled over. "Coffee sounds amazing, if you're heading down. I'll start a pot." As he left the room, a shiver crept across his shoulders that had nothing to do with the cold. Downstairs, the kitchen welcomed him with its rustic charm. White cabinetry, dark oak counters, and a large farmhouse sink in front of a rain-speckled window. Outside, the forest was drenched in mist. A deer stood near the edge of the trees, head lifted toward the sky. Ethan started the coffee and moved to the study while it brewed. The photograph he'd noticed yesterday still sat on the desk. He picked it up again. The mysterious woman standing in front of the house, her expression unreadable. A wind chime clinked softly just outside the open window, and for a brief second, it sounded almost like whispering. He turned abruptly. Nothing but the rain. But then he noticed something odd. A panel behind the desk, bare wood with uneven seams, as if the wall had once been altered. He set the photo down and knelt in front of it, ran his fingers along the edges. The wood was newer here, less worn, tighter grains. There was a thin gap between two panels. He pushed. Nothing happened. He pressed harder. Something clicked. A portion of the wall creaked open by an inch. His breath hitched. The panel was a door, a hidden one. It opened just wide enough for him to see inside. A narrow space, no more than 3 feet deep, like a hidden alcove. Dust and cobwebs filled the air. A small stool sat beneath a mounted shelf with a box on it, the lid slightly ajar. He reached in, heart pounding. Inside the box were old letters, dozens of them, each folded, some still in their envelopes, sealed with wax, others open and yellowed with age. He lifted the top one. It was addressed to someone named Caroline, dated 1983. As he read the first line, "You promised you wouldn't leave again," he heard soft footsteps behind him. He turned. Lila stood in the doorway, her robe cinched tightly at the waist, hair still tousled from sleep. "What is that?" she asked. He held up the letter. "I think this was a secret room." She didn't come closer. Her expression had shifted, subtle but sharp. "Well, were you looking through the walls?" "I wasn't, I just noticed the panel, it was already a little loose." She stepped forward, slowly. "What's in the letter?" He hesitated. "It's old. Not from us. From someone named Caroline." Lila looked at the box, and for a brief moment, no more than a heartbeat, Ethan swore he saw something flicker across her face. Recognition. But it was gone as quickly as it came. "I'll make us some coffee," she said, then turned and left the room. Ethan stood still for a long moment, letter in hand. Then he looked back down into the box. At the bottom, beneath the stack of folded pages, was a photograph. His heart dropped. It was Lila. Younger, maybe 19 or 20. Standing with a man Ethan didn't recognize. Her hair was longer, darker. But it was her. Her eyes, her mouth. She was holding the man's hand. They were standing in front of this house. Chapter 4. Unspoken Words. The morning passed in uneasy silence, the kind that settles in after a hidden truth has been uncovered. Ethan couldn't shake the image of the photograph, the unexpected glimpse of Lila as a young woman with someone who wasn't him. He hadn't shown her the picture, hadn't said a word about it, but it gnawed at him, a pit in his stomach that seemed to deepen with every passing hour. He found Lila in the living room, curled up on the sofa with a book in her lap, her legs tucked beneath her. The fire was crackling softly, casting long shadows across her face, and for a moment he just watched her. There was something vulnerable about her in the dim light, something he hadn't seen in a long time. It made his chest tighten. "Hey," he said, his voice tentative. Lila glanced up, her eyes softening slightly. Hey. Coffee's ready? He nodded, stepping closer to her. Lila. We need to talk. Her smile faded, just a little, but she set the book aside and patted the space next to her. Sit with me first. Talk after. He hesitated, then sat beside her. The familiar warmth of her body next to his almost felt like a comfort, but the distance between them felt deeper than the space on the couch. I found something today, Ethan began, his words slow, careful. In the study. She tensed, her body stiffening as if bracing for something. I found a photograph. Of you, he said, voice softer now, though the words hung heavy between them. And a man. I don't know who he is, but you were young, standing in front of the house. It looked like... Lila's face went pale. She stood abruptly, her breath quickening. Ethan, please. Who is he? His voice was low, almost a whisper, but it cracked with the weight of his question. Lila, why didn't you tell me? I didn't. She paused, swallowing hard. It's not what you think. He stood, too, closing the space between them, his hands reaching for hers. Then what is it, Lila? Why didn't you tell me about him? Her eyes welled with tears, but she quickly wiped them away, taking a shaky breath. Because I didn't want to hurt you. Ethan's heart pounded as the reality of her words hit him. He knew Lila, knew her soul, the way her heart beat, the way she loved. But this secret was like a wall he couldn't break through. Who was he? He repeated, his voice rougher now. Lila lowered her gaze, her voice barely a whisper. His name was Lucas. He was someone I was very close to before we met. He was a part of my life I never wanted to remember. The room seemed to hold its breath as Ethan tried to process what she was saying. But why didn't you tell me about him? About what happened? Lila took a deep, steadying breath before meeting his gaze again. Because I was running from him, Ethan. Running from everything about that time. It was painful. And it's not something I wanted to bring into our life together. Painful how? Ethan's voice was barely a whisper now. What happened? Lila closed her eyes, her hand trembling slightly in his. We were in love, she said, voice cracking. But we were also toxic. We hurt each other, badly. I left him, moved away, started fresh. I thought I could outrun it. But I couldn't. I've carried it with me all this time, and I couldn't bear the thought of you ever knowing. Ethan's chest tightened, his breath coming in shallow bursts. The weight of her confession crushed him, but at the same time, it stirred something else, something darker, deeper. He wanted to understand. He needed to understand. Did you love him? The words slipped out before he could stop them, a quiet, aching question. Lila's eyes searched his face for a moment, the silence between them thickening with every passing second. I don't know. I loved him, but it wasn't real. Not the way I love you, Ethan. Her words, soft and fragile, struck him like a blow. He didn't know if he believed her, or if he even wanted to, but what he did know was that the truth felt like a bitter pill in his throat. Well now, Lila? He asked, his voice breaking as he took a step back. Why didn't you tell me sooner? I thought it was over, she said, her voice barely audible. But when I came here, I saw him. I saw Lucas. I never thought I'd see him again, but I did. He came to the house. Ethan froze. What do you mean? When? Last night, she whispered, a tremor in her voice. I saw him standing in the garden, watching. Ethan's mind spun, racing through the implications. Are you sure? Could it have been someone else? Lila shook her head. I know what I saw. I didn't tell you because I didn't want to drag you into it, but now I can't ignore it anymore. The storm outside seemed to answer her, a bolt of lightning splitting the sky, followed by the deep rumble of thunder. The power flickered, and the house seemed to grow colder, darker. Ethan turned away, his hands tightening into fists. Why didn't you tell me sooner? He repeated, his voice tight with frustration. You let me walk into this house with you. You let me believe everything was fine. And now you tell me about him? Lila stepped forward, her hands reaching for him. I was protecting you, Ethan. Protecting us. I don't want protection, Lila. I want the truth. All of it. And I need you to tell me everything. A long, painful silence passed between them. Finally, Lila nodded, her eyes searching his face. I'll tell you everything, but only if you promise you won't hate me. Ethan's heart pounded in his chest, the weight of her words pressing down on him. He reached for her, pulling her into his arms despite the hurt that still lingered between them. I could never hate you, he whispered, but we need to face this, together. Chapter 5, Into the Past. The night fell heavy with the weight of unspoken truths. The house, once a quiet refuge from the noise of the world, now felt like a cage, a place where every shadow seemed to whisper and every creak of the floorboards felt like a warning. Ethan sat at the edge of their bed, his eyes trained on Lila, who had curled up under the blankets, staring at the wall as if it might provide the answers they both desperately needed. The storm outside had intensified, the rain now pounding relentlessly against the windows, each drop a drumbeat echoing the rhythm of his thoughts. Ethan couldn't remember the last time he felt so torn, so helpless, in the face of the woman he loved. Lila? He said softly, his voice cutting through the thick silence. Tell me everything. She didn't turn to face him, but her voice was quiet, almost fragile. It was a long time ago, Ethan, before you and I... Before everything. Lucas and I were young, and we were reckless. We loved each other, but we were toxic. Ethan swallowed hard. He wanted to reach for her, to hold her, but something kept him rooted in place. Something unspoken. Something raw. Tell me what happened, he pressed, the words slipping out with more urgency than he intended. Why did you leave him? And why are you so sure he's back? She took a slow breath, her fingers curling into the fabric of the sheets. I left him because I had to, Ethan. We both did things we couldn't take back. Things that hurt too much. Things I don't even want to remember. A chill ran down his spine. What things, Lila? What did you do? Her eyes flicked to him then, her expression a mixture of pain and regret. We were in love, but it wasn't healthy. We fought constantly, and She hesitated, biting her lip as if trying to find the right words. I made a choice. I walked away, but it wasn't because I didn't care. It was because I was afraid of losing myself in him. I thought I could move on. I thought I could forget. Ethan's heart ached as he watched her. He wanted to believe her. He wanted to believe that this, whatever it was in the past. But the nagging question lingered. If she had been able to walk away, why was Lucas suddenly back? And why hadn't she told him about him sooner? Why didn't you tell me about him when we first met? Ethan's voice cracked as he asked the question that had been eating away at him. Why didn't you tell me about Lucas when we got married? Lila's face crumpled, and she pulled the blanket up over her shoulders, as if hiding from the weight of his gaze. I was ashamed, Ethan. I didn't want you to think less of me. I didn't want you to see me as someone who had a past full of mistakes. I wanted a fresh start with you. A new life where I could leave all of that behind. I don't see you as someone with mistakes, Lila, Ethan said, his voice thick with emotion. But I need to understand. I need to know why Lucas is here now. Why is he watching us? I don't know, she whispered. I don't know why he's here. I thought I left him behind for good. The wind howled outside, the house shaking with the force of a gust that rattled the windows. Ethan's gaze drifted toward the darkened corner of the room, where shadows seemed to stretch and twist. It felt as if something were lurking there, waiting. I'll find out, he said, determination creeping into his voice. I'll find out what's going on, Lila. I won't let him hurt you again. Her eyes softened, and she reached for his hand, her fingers trembling slightly. Promise me, Ethan. Promise me you won't let him drag us back into that darkness. I won't survive it again. I can't. Ethan squeezed her hand, his heart heavy with the weight of her plea. I promise, Lila, I won't let him hurt you. Or us. The storm outside seemed to quiet for a moment, the wind dying down and the rain slowing to a steady drizzle, but the silence in the room felt oppressive, as if the house itself was holding its breath. They sat there for a long time, neither of them speaking, each lost in their own thoughts. Finally, Ethan stood and walked toward the door. I'm going to find out where he is. I'll be back. Lila didn't move, but her voice stopped him before he could leave the room. Ethan, she said, her tone hesitant. There's something I need to tell you. Something I haven't shared. Ethan turned back to her, his heart skipping a beat. What is it? Her eyes filled with tears, and for a moment she seemed to shrink into herself, as if afraid of what she might say. I never told you the truth about why I left. It wasn't just because of the fighting. There was something else, something that scared me more than anything. Ethan stepped closer, his pulse racing. What was it, Lila? Her voice broke as she spoke, the words almost impossible to hear. Lucas, he made threats. Threats against me, against us. If I didn't come back to him, he said he would destroy everything I loved. Ethan's stomach twisted with dread. And you think he's here to do that now? Lila nodded, her face pale. I don't know, but I feel him watching us. I feel him in the shadows, and I can't escape it. Ethan's eyes burned with a cold fury as he processed her words. His mind raced, trying to piece together what this all meant. There was no turning back now. The past had come crashing into their present, and there was no way out except through it. He reached for her hand, pulling her gently into his arms. We'll face this together, Lila. No more hiding. No more secrets. She clung to him, her body trembling with the fear she'd carried for so long. And in that moment, the storm outside raged louder, as if echoing the storm brewing in their lives. Chapter 6. The Hidden Room. Ethan didn't sleep that night. He couldn't. Every time he closed his eyes, the image of Lila's face haunted him, the fear, the uncertainty, the secrets she'd been keeping. And Lucas, her past, was the shadow that loomed over their future. He paced through the dimly lit corridors of the Victorian estate, the old wood creaking beneath his feet, the sound like a whisper of forgotten things. The storm outside had intensified again, wind howling through the trees and rain lashing against the windows as if nature itself was a reflection of his turmoil. The house felt different now, cold, lonely. What had once been a sanctuary for their troubled marriage now felt like a place of hidden horrors, a place where the past had crept into the present without warning. Lila's confession, Lucas's threats, had shattered the fragile peace they'd built here. He had to do something. He couldn't just sit back and wait for whatever was coming. His first instinct was to protect her, to shield her from whatever darkness Lucas was trying to drag them into. But as he walked down the dimly lit hallway, Ethan realized he couldn't protect her from everything. There were too many unknowns. A sudden noise broke the silence, distant, like a door creaking open. His heart skipped a beat, and he froze, listening. The house was old, but that sound hadn't come from the usual settling of the walls. It was a door, the door to the basement. Ethan's mind raced. He hadn't been down there yet. Lila had never mentioned it, but now he wondered if it held the answers to the mystery of Lucas's return. He moved cautiously toward the staircase that led to the basement, the air growing heavier with each step. As he descended into the darkness, the hairs on the back of his neck stood up. The basement was cold, colder than any other part of the house, and the walls seemed to close in around him as he fumbled for the light switch. The beam of the flashlight he'd grabbed before descending flickered before casting a weak glow over the room. The basement was cluttered with old furniture, dusty boxes, and forgotten belongings. Nothing unusual. Nothing that stood out as a sign of anything sinister. But as Ethan moved deeper into the room, his eyes caught something. A door. It was tucked away in the far corner, half hidden behind a stack of crates and an old wardrobe. He couldn't remember seeing it before, but now it seemed impossible to ignore. He approached it cautiously, his pulse quickening. There was something about that door, something off. The knob turned with ease and the door creaked open, revealing a small, narrow room beyond. It was barely big enough to stand in, its walls lined with shelves of old, dusty books and strange trinkets. At first glance, it looked like the forgotten remnants of someone's past. Nothing more than an old storage space. But, as his eyes swept across the room, something caught his attention. A photograph, one that looked eerily familiar. It was a picture of Lila, much younger, standing in front of the house. But this time, there was something different. Someone else stood beside her. A man with dark hair and a gaze that seemed too intense, too familiar. It was Lucas. Ethan's breath hitched in his chest. He had found the evidence, but now it only raised more questions. Why was this photograph hidden in the basement? What did it mean? He reached for the frame, examining it closely. The back of the photo was scratched with words he couldn't quite make out. He turned it over and squinted, trying to decipher the faint scrawl. "I'll come back for you, no matter what." The chill of those words settled over him like ice. Lucas had made good on his promise, and now it seemed like he was ready to drag Lila and Ethan into whatever nightmare had been left behind. Suddenly, a noise interrupted his thoughts. Footsteps above, faint but deliberate. Someone was in the house. Ethan's heart raced as he quickly shoved the photo back into place and bolted the basement door behind him. He had to warn Lila. He had to keep her safe. Chapter 7. Confrontation. Ethan rushed back upstairs, his mind racing. The footsteps had stopped, but he wasn't convinced it was just the wind. No, something was happening, something he couldn't ignore anymore. He reached the living room, finding Lila sitting on the sofa, her face pale. She had been waiting for him, her eyes wide with fear. "What's wrong?" she asked, voice trembling. "Ethan, what happened?" "I found something," he said, his voice low and urgent. "Something in the basement. There's a hidden room down there with a photograph of you and Lucas." Lila's face drained of color, and she stood abruptly, her hands gripping the edge of the couch. "What? You went down there?" I had to. Lila, you were right. He's here. Lucas is back and he's been here for a while. The fear in her eyes deepened. What do we do? Ethan moved toward her, his hand reaching for hers. We have to confront this. We can't run from it anymore. We have to face him. And we have to do it together. Lila's lip trembled as she looked up at him, her eyes full of doubt. But what if it's too late? What if... We'll face it, Lila, he repeated, pulling her into his arms. We'll figure this out. We're in this together. The room seemed to darken, the shadows stretching around them, as if the house itself was watching, listening. The storm outside roared louder, but within the walls of the estate, Ethan and Lila were no longer alone. Someone was watching them. Someone who knew their every move, every secret. And this time they weren't running.